Let's take back control of our borders and reduce the number of people coming into our country. That is what people voted for in the Brexit referendum. They voted for it again in the European election of 2019. They voted for it again in the general election in December of 2019. But it's not happened because the legal net migration figure yesterday was an astonishing 600,000. But the Migration Observatory of Oxford are predicting that even by 2030, net migration will still be pushing 300,000 a year more than before the Brexit vote. Well, Dr. Mike Jones is Executive Director of Migration Watch. The 600,000 figure, Mike, was a huge figure, partly because of people coming, refugees from Hong Kong, Ukraine, etc. But we're also told huge numbers of students are coming to the United Kingdom. Some suggestions they shouldn't be included in the net migration figures, because there seems to be an assumption amongst our political class that all these students, once they finish, go home, but they don't really, do they?
No, well, obviously students have to be included in the net migration figures because of population pressures on housing, on infrastructure, on public services. So it's right and proper that they are included in the statistics. In terms of leaving the country, the Migration Observatory, in their forecasts, I believe are being overly optimistic.
Do you?
Because their assumptions are based on 21% of students remaining in the country long term. But Robert Jenrick has cited a figure closer to 40%. So that requires clarification because that puts a spanner in the works in terms of the forecasts.
I mean, being a foreign student, the universities love it because they pay quite a lot of money to come every year. But if up to 40% stay forever, that's a huge number, isn't it?
It is, and there's more to this. The student composition has actually changed radically since we left the European Union. So the number of European students has actually nosedived. The number of non-European students has skyrocketed. There's a large cohort from, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, and the gap between our economy and their economies is greater than the gap between our economy and other EU states. So the incentive to remain here long term is much, much higher.
And equally, the gap between our culture and their culture is bigger too, isn't it?
Indeed.
So in terms of assimilation, in terms of integration, that makes it a bigger problem, doesn't it, going ahead?
Well, yes, I mean, immigration isn't just about economics.
No.
It's also about culture and social cohesion. Obviously, the economics and the culture do dovetail in certain areas. But ultimately, as we've seen over the past week or so, the impact of migration is intergenerational. And, obviously people import their own values.
Well, yes, I mean, the Palestinian movement is an example of a relatively new population in this country having a different set of priorities to us.
Absolutely, yes. People import their own ethnic loyalties and rivalries, and obviously this can create difficulties in terms of social cohesion.
Oh, and we've seen this playing out on the streets of Birmingham with Hindu groups and Muslim groups clashing. We've seen it over the last couple of years. I mean, if net migration is still 300,000 or more, you think, by 2030, we've just become addicted to cheap foreign labour, haven't we?
Yes, I agree with that. There's a sort of political economy of migration, and you have vested interests within the cabinets, you have business groups, and obviously you have third sector organisations. So there is a pressure there to either maintain the status quo or actually increase the numbers.
No, there is. And a final thought on illegal immigration stroke asylum. So many strong, bellicose words from successive Home Secretaries. Big court case, we're awaiting a judgment. Any thoughts where we're going?
Well, it's very interesting because the Migration Observatory, they believe the asylum numbers will remain more or less constant, but we have a general election around the corner. So even if the Supreme Court rules in favour of the government, the Rwanda plan is given the green flag. If Labour come into power, they will scrap Rwanda, they will amend and water down the illegal migration plan. And that could actually increase the pull factor. And if you look at the number of people coming across the Mediterranean through the Bosphorus Strait,
significantly
the Balkans, it's up. And the Labour Party want a returns policy, but they're not going to get that. The EU have completely ruled it out. they will have to have essentially
dear.
an exchange program, which could increase illegal migration.
Oh dear, I have a feeling, Mike Jones, you'll be back on the programme.